Hey everybody, and welcome to Q&A Wednesday, where I answer the questions that you have about your health and fitness goals. I kind of picked an interesting topic tonight for a couple of reasons, and I'll tell you about those in just a second. But I find it really fascinating right now, just with what's going on in the world, that we have so much conflicting information. And it's interesting. I've been working as a personal trainer for almost a decade now, and I think back to what I learned as a new trainer, and how differently I look at things now because, of course, I've educated myself much more. And so what I want to talk tonight about is how and why you should educate yourself. And of course, we're going to put this in the perspective of nutrition, but it really is usable in any type of information that you want. Like I said, we've got a lot of conflicting information. No matter where you look today, it's just a lot of craziness going on. But I find that within the nutrition and the fitness industry, there's just a lot of first of all, there's a lot of noise. You listen to a lot of things online and you're just going, okay, well, are we supposed to eat fat? Are we not supposed to eat fat? What's right for me? What am I supposed to listen to? And so we're going to talk about the best ways to make sure that you're getting the right information. We also want to make sure that there's a reason for it. I've discovered that I just love to learn. That's just part of how I roll. That's part of my personality. And of course, as a former school teacher, I also want to pass that information on. So I will tell you that the reason I decided to focus on this was I posted something on Facebook the other night and got a lot of feedback that was, people were mad. And of course, I probably put in a way that was kind of ornery, but I was really frustrated. And I don't tend to sugarcoat anything. So my comment said something to the effect of, look, if I'm required to wear a mask to protect you, you should be also willing to do what it takes to protect you. And of course, I'm talking health and nutrition. And it's amazing to me how many people, first of all, were mad. And secondly, how many people believe that as long as they're wearing a mask, they should be okay? And I'm going, wait a minute. We live in a nation right now where 75% of Americans are overweight, and the biggest reason for death is from metabolic diseases, including diabetes, heart disease, anything that's part of the metabolic syndrome. And I find it really fascinating that all of these people think that, as long as they're doing this one thing that we've been told, then nothing else matters. And so it really kind of comes down to accountability. And so, like I said, it was pretty funny. I had a couple of people argue with me, had somebody tell me I was insensitive, and I was like, okay, well, you apparently haven't listened to anything else I've ever said, because of course the reason I do everything that I do is because I love people and I want you all to be healthy and happy. To me, that is super important. That's why I do all this information and education for free. And I don't know everything. One of the greatest things about being a lifelong learner is the more you learn, the more you realize there's so much more to learn. And so I love it. My focus is pretty much nutrition for the most part, because I'm so aware that nutrition makes a bigger difference than anything else, and that the majority of the diseases that we have in America today come from malnutrition, right? So again, there's more to it. There's a lot more to it. And of course, you can go back to everything I've ever done on Facebook Live. After I'm done with these, I have somebody that uploads them to YouTube for me. You can go back and watch all this education for free. You can even start at the beginning and watch the transformation of the things that I talk about earlier, and then how much over time I realized that nutrition makes the biggest difference. And so as I talk about nutrition in the health and fitness industry, and about just health in general, I find it really fascinating that we discount that. As long as we're exercising, we should be able to make all this difference. And it's not. Nutrition makes a bigger difference than anything else. I also found it funny that I was told that because I'm not a doctor, I don't know what I'm talking about, which I find super funny, because most doctors have zero nutrition education. By all means, they have my absolute respect. Please don't think that I don't value and respect what a doctor does. I just find it very unfortunate that they're not taught prevention. They're just taught fix. So if you don't think I don't educate myself, I've got quite the stack of books here. These are just the ones I own. I pretty much consistently, and they're all on nutrition and hormones and women and health, just everything from, I'm reading a really good book right now by the same author as the Diabetes Code, called The Cancer Code. So again, if I have a client that is dealing with any of those issues, I read up on it, because I know I don't know everything. So yeah, anyway, Let's talk about why it's important to educate yourself. You know, the craziest thing about nutrition industry is that if you look over time, if you look at the initial food pyramid that we had way back when, it's obviously morphed over time, but if those things were working, do you remember when they talked about in the early 90s, I believe it was, how fat, eating fat causes fat? And so they came out with all these low fat options and said, really you need to limit your fat to this amount. And then we had this explosion of obesity over the next several decades. And they've changed it and morphed the guidelines over time, but it hasn't really accomplished anything because we're still struggling with the epidemic of obesity and those kind of diseases. So really, even if an expert has said something, I fully believe it's really important to do your own due diligence to find out if that information is correct. And again, we're going to talk about why that is in just a second. But that's what brought on this topic tonight. I'm not mad. I'm frustrated. I'm very frustrated that, number one, people aren't taking the accountability for their own health. And number two, that it doesn't matter what people who really do a lot of studying in this say, because I don't just get my information from anywhere. It is from doctors and people within. That is their that's their expertise. I love to listen to a lot of Dr. Mark Hyman. He's an integrative nutritionist and a doctor, and really believes that food is medicine. And I agree. If we're I also have been listening to Dr. Jason Fung talk about how the evidence is there that sugar can cause cancer. So again, if you listen to what these people have to say, you might hear some things that are different than we learned, right? We really didn't get a lot of education in school about how to eat healthy. It's frustrating. It's very frustrating as someone trying to educate people in their best interests. We're not just trying to tell people, eat healthy because we want to sell you something. Actually, I sell nothing, right? So let's talk a little bit about the best way to learn. Yes, you can do a lot of book learning, and I think that's important. Like I said, I read a ton. I don't even listen to music anymore when I lift or when I'm doing stuff. I actually listen to podcasts predominantly by doctors that I respect because I know where their education comes from. So I take a lot of that education that I learned, the book learning, the reading, and then the experiences that I have, what has worked for people, where are they seeing success, and I add a huge dose of common sense because again, when you hear conflicting information, sometimes you have to kind of come down to, well, that doesn't make any sense, right? Like the whole low fat, that should have solved all of our issues, right? So if the fact that is we're seeing these huge spikes of obesity over the next couple of decades probably wasn't correct. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how, unfortunately, even in the science industry, you get some different things that can change the information that you might get. And part of that is bias. A lot of times scientists and people come in and they think, okay, well, this is the one thing I'm trying to prove. And so then they're just looking for the information that proves their point. We all do it, right? We all have this idea and this narrative, and then we go back and find the facts that supports that. But unfortunately, that doesn't always give us the information that we need or the information that's in our best interest. So that can be a huge problem. The other thing is a lot of the education, the data and the research that's been done in the nutrition industry is paid for by certain food corporations, and so it's a huge conflict of interest, right? If I'm getting my my sponsorship or my I can't think of the word, sorry, it's Wednesday, the money to do the research, and I'm getting it from that certain food industry, whether it's, the sugar industry. Let's just say I'm getting money from the sugar industry, and so I'm trying to prove that sugar doesn't cause a problem, probably going to be leaning more towards finding the information that supports that sugar is good for you, right? We all know it's not, right? So it's a little frustrating, but really most of the research done in nutrition has been by big food corporations. So you're not getting the fact that they're causing these problems, these diseases. There's just not a lot of data that is independently proven. So that can be a problem. You just kind of have to go back and find out who's paying for that research, and that's part of it. So, if you really, again, I'm going to give you several tips into the best way to decide whether or not it's something that really is good information, it's correct. But I find that the kind of the definition of insanity applies here. You know, if you are doing the same things over and over and over again, expecting different results, and that doesn't happen, maybe we have a problem. Yeah, I just don't get it. Like, we still are getting a lot of the same information spouted from even corporations that work with doctors, because they have to, that's what they're required to say, but it's not working. Right? So again, I think that's really interesting that if there's a problem, wouldn't you want to look for other information? So let's talk about that. So just really quickly for what I posted on Facebook yesterday. Yeah, you can go back. It's on my personal page. It's actually down below. You can look at it. Yeah, I'm not going to retract my statement. You know, if you're not taking good care of yourself, it's really frustrating for me, who does take good care of myself. And I do, trust me, I wear my mask, I social distance, I do all those things. I just get very frustrated that people focus solely on that and not on their own personal health, which is so important, even outside of the pandemic. Like, take care of yourself. Don't you want to have a great quality of life and live a long time? You would think so. You would think that that would be important. So the first thing I want you to do when you're looking to educate yourself, well, first of all, you gotta be interested in it, right? So biology was not something I was interested in high school, but as someone who is now a grandmother and has really kind of shifted gears in my career, I find biology fascinating on multiple levels. So I really enjoy learning, and I don't just focus on nutrition, but that is a good portion of what I'm interested in, and I've done a lot of research on. Guys, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of hours, if not thousands, between listening to podcasts and reading books. The library knows me well, and I order a lot off of eBay as well, but I do have a good log of a lot of information that I've read. And again, I don't know everything, but I will tell you if I don't know something. There's so much to learn. And back to really quick, you know, I've had doctors as clients, and they are amazing people, but even they don't know enough about nutrition in order to, if you're getting an opinion from just a regular doctor, unfortunately, you're probably getting more the myplate.gov information, which again, if you saw, I posted a Dr. Mark Hyman video earlier today, and it talks about how the information on myplate.gov is inappropriate for about 90% of the American population. It's semi-appropriate for people who are super healthy, but because we have so much disease and epidemics of obesity, it's not appropriate for most people. If you listen to the podcast, it's really good, and it'll tell you why and how we got to this point. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to consider the source. You know, if you're just listening to some 20-year-old bikini girl on Instagram, she may or may not know what she's talking about. And what I tell people is, like, even if I tell you something, please, by all means, go fact check me. Go look it up, go read it. I'll probably tell you what source that I got that information from, which doctor's talking about it, which book I got it from, because I think that's super important. Like I said, I don't think that we should rely specifically on the fact that we've heard it once. We need to go back and we need to do that education. And again, that's how I learned where the different information from the dietary information we get from the government has come from, and why I know that it's not really a good source of information for people. So again, not everything that you hear is true. You would think that we would remember that, you know, the old memes that just because you're here on the internet doesn't make it true. But for some odd reason, we all seem to think, okay, well, you know, we're being told that somewhere, so we should do it, you know. Technology leaders and government leaders telling us certain things, but they're not doctors or scientists. So again, I know some of them say that they get their information from certain people, but I want to see it. I want to see the data. I want to see the research. I want to read it myself. I want to see who produced it, who, you know, what, when the experiments, when the research was done. Like, I'm weird. Like, seriously, I'm a huge nerd. I want to know everything. I want to know that what you say is true. And I want the evidence to back it up. So that's really super important for me. And it really, when I decide what books to read and what, I mean, there's times where I read a book and I initially like, oh, he's a doctor, he has, you know, good background. And then I read some things that I already know are incorrect, like saturated fat is bad. We've already started to see the information that does not back that up, that saturated fat is not necessarily the problem. And so, again, I think the hardest thing is that, and we're seeing it today in the environment that we're in, that the people who do know a lot of times get censored because it doesn't fit within the narrative of whoever is trying to keep up the narrative. So again, the food industry does not want you to know that whatever they're putting in their products are a problem. And then when experts, people who've done the research on it, try to talk, sometimes they get shut up. So that can be a huge problem. You got to pay attention to that. Do your own fact finding. So here's an example. Early on in the nutrition and industry of medicine, the majority of the testing that was done on men, which again, as we know as women, our bodies are different. We produce different hormones. Our body reacts differently to exercise, to nutrition. That's really not smart to just base that information off of men and then just apply it to women. It doesn't work that way. So again, you want to make sure that the information that we're getting is appropriate and that it's been done correctly so that it makes sense, right? You would think so, but that's just not the way it works. The second thing is look at all the angles. I think it's important, not just because it sounds good or just because that part makes you feel good doesn't mean you shouldn't look at the other end of it. I want to see both sides of the debate or the idea. And then I want to be able to make my own comparison. Does that make sense to me? Robert Kiyosaki, who wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, says there's 3 sides to every coin. There's the heads, the tails, and the edges. And so, again, if you look at enough pieces of information, use a little bit of common sense, and play some of that information off of each other, at some point you're going to be able to come up with that information that you truly need to know and what is really correct. Number 3 is trust but verify. If it is a doctor that's telling you hey, this is the nutritional information you should be going after, cool. But again, look somewhere else. Is there another doctor that's backing that up? Has there been some research? Have there been double-blind studies? Have all those things happened? I know I'm getting a little technical, but just use common sense. Are multiple people talking about it? And not just, you're going to see a lot on something called the seven country study, I believe it's called. And off the top of my head, I cannot think of the guy that did it. Unfortunately, it was a 22 country study, and he handpicked the countries he wanted the data from. So again, a lot of the information based off on our early, the food pyramids that the dietary portion of our government gave us was based on faulty and biased information. So again, make sure that you're really paying attention to what's going on. Verify, do your own research. Is the research valid? And again, I know that it sounds scary, but it could just be that you're reading a couple of different books from different doctors or from people who are really important in the nutrition industry. Again, just because they're touted as an expert doesn't always mean they're giving you the right information. As we talked about earlier, find out where their funding's coming from. I think that's super important. They're supposed to disclose where their funding is coming from. Number 4, is it a theory, right? Sometimes I come up with things I'm like, I think that if people eat more fat, the healthy fats in their diet, then their body learns how to burn fat as fuel, and so they're able to burn fat off their body easier. But if they have a high carbohydrate diet, their body doesn't know how to become fat adapted. And initially I never talked about it because I was like, well, that's a theory. That sounds good. That makes sense to me, but I don't have the information to back it up. And then I did enough research and reading that I found that information. So yes, in order to become fat adapted, you have to eat a higher fat diet and stop eating carbohydrates and sugar in order for your body to switch over. So is it a theory? Has it been proven? Is it an ideology? I find that one super fascinating, that just because somebody smart came up with it without really doing any testing, now it's become fact. And that doesn't work for me. So again, you can get mad at me all you want. I really don't care at this point in life. My goal is for you to understand yourself, your body, your health. I want you to live a very long time, and I want you to have a very quality life. I mean, that's great if I live till 89, but if for the last 11 years I can't remember who I am because I have dementia, that's a problem, right? And a lot of those things, yes, your genetics might play a role, but the environment plays most of the time a much bigger role in that. So I want you to feel good. I want you to be healthy. So is it a theory? Is it an ideology? Is it an opinion? And that's not always a bad thing, but you can't take that as gospel. Opinion does not equal fact. And I'm seeing so much of that right now just in all of the information out there, period. And I'm just going, I don't know, every day my jaw drops. I just sit there thinking, what the hell is going on? Like, it makes no sense. You've said this, now you said that. That's polar opposite. And really, there is a lot of noise. If you're predominantly listening to social media, again, you need to fact check all that. You need to make sure that it might be your favorite IFBB pro, super cool. I don't even have a problem with that. Go and figure out if what she's saying is backed up elsewhere. Sometimes I get some great ideas. I'm like, wow, that's really interesting. Let me go see where I can find that so that I can know that that's backed up as truth. You know, especially in the bodybuilding world, there's a lot of information called bro science. And I find it super funny because people are like, well, it's true because it happened. And I'm like, well, that's anecdotal. That doesn't necessarily prove it. And that might have happened for you despite the fact that you were doing that. So I want to see the science. Like I said, I've done a lot of educating myself because I don't have a lot of patience for, I'm going to say stupid, and I don't mean that against any of you, but there's just wow. So facts should be based on evidence, and do your own fact checking. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. Don't get caught up in the hoopla. Don't get caught up in the hoopla, the emotion. And granted, I'm still talking about nutrition. You're probably thinking politics. I hate politics, not gonna lie. I've had to like get myself off this week because I can't stand it. So much garbage going on. But even like within every day, there's a new diet. There's a new way to do it. You've got keto and paleo, and I can only eat meat. And okay, not everybody's the same. Sometimes just because somebody comes out with that information, and again, it doesn't mean you shouldn't read it and you shouldn't figure out if that's something that could work for you. But just because it worked for them does not mean that it's correct for you and your body and your genetics and your age and all of that. You got to make sure that you, again, I'm not even against keto, but I really fully believe it's not for everybody. It's for very few people for some very specific reasons. So you have to understand. And even, you know, as 5-6 years ago, people would ask me about intermittent fasting and I would say, I don't like it. Now I've done some research and I'm not against it, but you have to follow the protocols and you have to understand what the benefits are, why, and you have to make it appropriate for you. So I have definitely come a long way since I've been working in this industry. So again, make sure you're doing your due diligence. I know you don't have time to do a lot of research, so that's not even the point. But my only request is to not take things at face value. Just because you hear it once, just because, you know, people are touting it, before you try it, make sure it's appropriate, that it's safe, and that it makes sense. Again, a lot of people are like, well, you're not into masks. Well, I don't like them. Do I feel like they do enough? Not going to respond to that one. I really feel that keeping your body as healthy as possible, which, you know what? Okay, so let me back up and just say, I know a lot of people said, well, so-and-so died and they were super healthy and they were a bodybuilder. Okay, you really don't know what their background is and what's going on behind the scenes. So again, here's my thought. Wouldn't you do everything you possibly could to make yourself not just as healthy as possible, but that if you were to catch a virus, that you would be able to fight it off? That's what I would think. Like, if you're scared, you probably should be doing some things to help keep you safe. And to me, that would be one of them. Why would you want to fill yourself? We already know that 1 teaspoon of sugar can actually mute your immune system up to 50% for several hours. That's a pretty easy option. That's something that you can fix pretty quickly, and you can do something right now to help protect yourself and keep yourself healthy. So again, I'm not saying that you shouldn't wear masks. I'm just saying there's more that you can do that can make you, help you be prepared and help you get past this situation. Now, again, if you choose to listen to the Mark Hyman video that I posted, the link to below, they talked about that and again, this isn't my information, this is theirs. Fact check it. One of the things that they believe has a biggest difference in whether or not somebody's going to make it if they are taken to the hospital because of the COVID virus. One of the things that can be a downside is if they have high blood sugar. So she talks about it better. The guest he has talks about it way better than I just did. But I kind of knew that. I know some information about how oxygen and sugar play a role in your cells. So again, go listen to it. It's great information. I'm not even trying to necessarily make people feel bad, but I do want you to think about it. It's super important. I was also accused of not understanding because I have a low body fat. But for anybody who knows that I used to be obese, yeah, I really don't even care. I really don't even care what you think. Like, if you don't want to listen to me and don't want to be my friend, get off my Facebook page. I just don't care. Okay. So again, let's make sure that I'm covering everything. So like I said, I would say that something as important as your health, especially with what we're dealing with, deserves your time and energy to make sure. And a lot of us are staying home a little more than normal. You have the time and you have the availability to find the information. So it's unfortunate that these, again, if you've done any research whatsoever as to, again, where some of the sponsorships and the money comes for some of this research, unfortunately, you're going to realize that in a lot of instances, the money trumps what's, the importance to people, or the goal, the good of the people, and that's wholly unfortunate at this point. So again, you are your own best advocate. You are. Even when you work with a doctor, that's awesome, but you are your own best advocate. You have to educate yourself. And of course, the changes that we need to make can only be done with our own pocketbooks. If you don't purchase the crappy food, they're going to stop making it. Yeah, I'm not going to go too much into the actual nutrition part itself. I really wanted to talk about education today. Just be aware, be educated, take a moment, do some research. If something sounds interesting or sounds good, or you're just really unsure if that's something that you should take note of, go past the first page you're looking at. Do some multiple inquiries as to whether or not that information is credible. So I'm going to be calm this week. Like I said, I'm kind of detoxing myself from the information on current world problems and the news. I don't watch mainstream news anymore at all. I really don't trust them anymore, unfortunately. So I do a lot of deep digging on my own. But I hope that I find you safe and healthy through this holiday season. For those of you who have lost loved ones, I feel for you. My heart is with you. You are in my prayers. I really do love people. It's funny, I'm an introvert, so I do spend a good portion of my time alone because that's how I recharge. But in general, I really love people until they prove to me that I shouldn't. And sometimes, unfortunately, that does happen. But have an incredible Christmas. I will be doing one more next week. I think things are going to change just a little bit in January. I've got some great stuff coming up that you'll want to be aware of. But have an incredible evening. I do love you all. Until next week, that is Q&A Wednesday. Educate yourself.